Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 ah, yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You knew we know.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Medical Marijuana Radio for another Saturday night. This is January the 7th, and I'm your host, Larry Love. We had a guest scheduled for tonight. They needed to postpone till a couple of weeks down the line, so I think we're just going to hang out for a while. Let's remember that this is your show, and we'd like you to call in. We want to hear about your experiences with cannabis and your health, and how it's helping you. So the numbers are on the screen. Please remember, this is an interactive show. We need to get people calling up. Tell your friends, and we'll take it from there. So I'm going to look for a couple articles to read. I'm going to keep it very low-key unless somebody calls in. If I'm playing some music and you want to call, just call in. I'll stop the song, and we'll go right into talking about MMJ in the USA. So, first of all, going on the Talk of the Town website, which is talkofthetown.com, there's a gentleman I haven't met yet, but he's on a couple of other radio shows, John Doe Radio in Denver and a few other places. He's a very knowledgeable man, and he's a big advocate, Steve Elliott. So, he has a website called talkofthetown.com. There's a lot of news up there and interesting stories, and a lot of times some slant, his editorial slant on what's going on. This is really an interesting one. This is coming from Arizona, which is our neighbor, and of course, you know, they have a program that started about last year around this time, or in April. It hasn't really been implemented yet. They've got about 18,000 people in the program, but nowhere to buy medicine. They haven't approved any dispensaries, and the governor there is sort of wacky and trying to figure federal things out. But this is something that could pertain to us as well here in New Mexico, because we do have Native American tribes and land. And this little article, I haven't read it all the way through yet, so you'll have to excuse my cold read, but it seems interesting. Arizona tribe is seizing cars of medical marijuana patients. A Native American tribe in Arizona says that the state's medical marijuana cards don't apply on tribal lands, and has apparently started seizing the vehicles of legal cannabis patients as they pass through. Under Arizona law, the state's 18,000 medical marijuana patients with state-issued cards are allowed to transport small amounts of cannabis in their vehicles, but not on tribal lands, reports Ray Stern of the Phoenix Times. Now I'm just going to pause and comment on that much of it so far. Also here in New Mexico, because we do have tribal land, our Linen, Air, and Compassionate Act states that we cannot imbibe on tribal land. That's also considered federal land. So this something that could happen here. Anyway, it goes on. In case of the Salt River Maricopa Pima Indian community, that includes a strip of the Loop 101 freeway, and it seems that every legal patient who drives down that particular stretch of freeway is not only putting his or her medicine at risk, but the vehicle that they are driving as well. A qualified patient told New York Times that he was recently stopped for no reason on the 101 by a tribal cop, and that his car was seized by the tribe after a few grams of marijuana was found. The man said that the tribal officer pulled him over, claimed his reverse lights were stuck on. They weren't, he said. The officer claimed that he could smell marijuana in the car, and the motorist admitted that he had some on him, but he showed the officer the medical marijuana registration card, and it didn't help. The Salt River, back it up. The Salt River Tribal Police officer wrote him a repair order for the reverse lights and then seized the car. Sounds to me like if they seized the car, maybe they should have it fixed for the guy. Anyway, back to the article. Fortunately, the unnamed source said he learned Friday morning that he'll be getting his car back. The tribe agreed to release the vehicle to his dad, actual owner of the vehicle, on an innocent bystander loophole. They're making him fly out of here to get the car, he said. The story isn't unusual, according to J.R. Packhorse, a law specialist who helps defend people in tribal court. In another case on the Salt River Reservation, this one not on the freeway, I had a man who lost a brand new Denali for a roach and 2 seeds, Packhorse said. I lost, they kept it. While Valerie Tom, a spokeswoman for the tribe, wouldn't comment on any specific bust, she did confirm that medical marijuana registration cards don't apply on that stretch of 101 or anywhere else on the tribal lands. This seems to leave Arizona medical marijuana patients in the position of putting their medicine and vehicles at risk if they drive through tribal lands while carrying cannabis, even if they are just on the freeway going from one non-tribal place to another. People who transport drugs in any jurisdiction face the possibility that they will be arrested, prosecuted, and that the vehicles they use to transport drugs may be seized, reads a written statement from the tribe. And let's see, this sounds like the statement here. The Salt River Police Department, like all law enforcement agencies, takes appropriate actions with regard to drug offenses. People who transport drugs in any jurisdiction face the possibility that they will be arrested, prosecuted, and that the vehicles they use to transport drugs may be seized. As the U.S. Attorney's Office made clear on the May 2nd, 2011 letter to the Arizona Department of Health Services, Arizona law, including the Arizona Medical Cannabis Act, does not apply to Indian country. The community will therefore continue to enforce tribal and federal laws as they apply to drug offenses. While the community has no desire to interfere with individuals' exercise of their rights under the Arizona law, given that the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act has not been fully implemented, it does not appear that drivers within the community, including those traveling on state or federal rights of way, have the legal authority to possess marijuana within the exterior boundaries of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. That's the information that was issued by that department on the Indian tribal land. Last May, Gila River Indian community officials asked Pinal County supervisors not to locate medical marijuana dispensaries within a mile of their borders because they don't recognize medical marijuana and will prosecute anyone who tries to sell or use on tribal land, reports Lindsay Colomb of the Arizona Republic. Pinal supervisors approved a medical marijuana ordinance without accommodating the tribe's request. Well, that's interesting. I wonder what their ancestors were smoking about 100 or 2 or 3 or 400 years ago. I'll bet you it was cannabis. This is really quite crazy. So we'll see how that turns out, and hopefully here in New Mexico that won't happen. And as my understanding, people, let's say a Native American here in New Mexico was in the medical cannabis program, they cannot imbibe in their own home on their reservation, on their tribal land. So there's a lot of stuff to be worked out over the next few years. Now, just a little update on what's going on here in New Mexico. I was over at the Department of Health a week ago Friday, and it seems to me like they've have had a clean sweep. There's nobody the same in there anymore, and things are running better. I heard from some patients this week that just got their cards. One of them took less than 2 weeks. Things are getting turned around again in a normal fashion. So, if you have any friends or relatives out there that want to get into the New Mexico program, it would be a good time for them to get their papers signed and get them over to the DOH. They're getting in a lot faster now, and that's really good news after the disaster that was going on from June, July, August, September, October, November. It just was, and December, real crazy out there. Let's see what else is going on. Let's go back and see if there's another interesting article on Talk of the Town. The numbers are on the screen. Come on, you guys. 505-514-0098, 575-5194-MMJ, and there's some other numbers there if you're in another state. Let's see this one. There's also some interesting flashback from the Weed Wars program that was on the Discovery Channel. There were 4 episodes that most of you have probably seen. And in the last episode, Steve D'Angelo, who is really a brilliant man who has been fighting for the people in this plant for his whole life practically, he had made a statement. I don't really remember it word for word, but he had mentioned that that he wasn't for legalization of marijuana. That he was looking to get this medicine to the people, to enhance people's lives. I don't know what he really meant by that. I would love to get in touch with him. But there's been backlash from other people in the industry. NORML, that's the organization that's been fighting for legalization for 40-something years. There's an article here that I'll read for you. Let me just get to the full text page. Hang on. Come on up. This one starts off, NORML owes the medical marijuana community an apology. And, of course, this is written by Steve Elliott, the gentleman that runs Talk of the Town, and this is from yesterday, Friday, January 6th. NORML Executive Director Alan St. Pierre has called the medical marijuana industry a legal farce and largely a sham in an article which hit the web yesterday, creating a backlash among NORML's many supporters, quite a few of whom likely just became former supporters in the medicinal cannabis industry. How many times must we repeat this? Attacking medical marijuana is not good legalization strategy. The sadly predictable outcome is that for the next umpteen years, every single time a medical cannabis initiative is raised in any state, the opposition are going to drag out St. Pierre's ill-considered words as ammunition. Why are you sitting there trying to tell us this state needs a medical marijuana law when NORML itself has admitted medical marijuana is fraud and a sham? This piece, published by Steve Bloom on Celebrity Stoner, and that's celebritystoner.com, and this is according to NORML's Radical Russ Belville. Radical Russ Belville does a daily marijuana show on the internet every day around, I think, 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and of course it repeats, and you guys can always go listen to that stuff. Anyway, so let me get back to the article. Radical Russ Belville, from private listserv emails sent last October and without St. Pierre's permission, is really unfortunate, and it is a huge, huge blunder on NORML's part. NORML just relies on money from the public, to fight, for legalization and so forth. The pity of it is, it's not just NORML that's going to have to pay for St. Pierre's mistake. It's the medical cannabis community, which he apparently so disdains. I guess Alan St. Pierre has been fighting for all these years. Must have been smoking something really strong that night, because all of us out there know medicinally that this is a miracle for a lot of people. You'd think that the number one guy at the national organization, which depends upon contributions for its lifeblood, would have been a little more circumspect with his words, especially since the medical marijuana community has poured so much money into legalization for everyone. But such was unfortunately not the case. In one of the worst and most demonstrable false statements he made, St. Pierre claimed, this is the quote, "The Medipot industry, of course, opposes actual legalization, such as last year's Prop 19, which was also opposed by the profiteering communities in the state's northern grow counties." That's Prop 19 from California that was leading in the polls for months and months and months. And then about a week or 2 weeks before the actual election, Eric Holder, the Attorney General, came out and said, "Look, California, if you legalize marijuana, we're just going to come after you anyway. So, watch yourselves." And at the same time, people and families and generations of growers in Northern California, they were actually against legalization because they've been growing for so many years on the black market, and actually they support their communities really nicely by buying houses and cars and stuff. They were afraid that legalization was going to hurt this underground industry of theirs. So that's another reason why it didn't work in California. And I guess this year in Colorado they're going to try it, and I hope that they succeed. I am heavily in the medical marijuana business here, but I've been for legalization, and actually I used to pass out flyers for NORML when I was about 22 years old in Los Angeles. They had a very small, probably their first office on Sunset Boulevard between Hollywood and downtown. I used to go there and pick up flyers and pass them out all over the place 40 years ago. So anyway, back to the article. That certainly comes as news to many of NORML's heaviest contributors, whom I suspect will be remembering this little incident next time NORML asks for a check. Talk about self-fulfilling prophecies. I'm aware, as everyone else, that many profit-hungry growers and dispensary owners opposed Prop 19 back in 2010 and called them out on it very publicly. In many cases, by name, I was told you can't say that, and it's really not a good idea to piss off the growers. And I basically told the greedy bastards to go fuck themselves. Now, who the hell is saying that? I'm trying to read if that was NORML, the guy from NORML, or if it's Steve Elliott writing that. I'm not real sure. If you want to read that article and figure it out, you can. This doesn't change the fact that many medical marijuana patients and providers, I feel safe in saying the vast majority, support legalization for everyone. And I believe that as well. I mean, like I just said, I've been fighting for legalization for a long time, and started smoking when I was 18 years old, and 40-something years later, I'm actually using it medicinally and not just recreationally. Okay, back to the end of the article. Well, we still have a bit more to go. How do I know? Because it's not just for some pie-in-the-sky, idealistic, altruistic reason of justice. It also is the outcome of enlightened and self-interest. Let me explain. Those who have spent much time examining the problem have come to the conclusion that medical marijuana patients and providers will never ever be safe in their homes and places of business until cannabis is legal for all adults. Until that time, we, as the medical marijuana patients, have targets on us, both for rip-offs and for overzealous law enforcement, many of whom are still in denial about the medical marijuana laws and have no love for marijuana and the people who use it, no matter how sick they are. One of the first things I did after I started smoking pot at the age of 17 back in 1977 was to send off my membership dues to the National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Laws. I was proud to be a member of the group that wanted to be a part of the solution to cannabis prohibition in the United States. And now as I read this, I believe this is Steve Elliott, his words, and he's writing this. NORML has always been about the eventual legalization of marijuana for recreational purposes, a goal with which 100%, I 100% agree. What I cannot and will never agree to is disparaging the medical marijuana community as a way of getting to that goal. And while I have not always agreed with everything NORML has said and done, I have always been quite resistant to the usual NORML bashers who throw around the accusations of being a lawyer's lobby, or such nonsense. I've even had to delete a few obnoxious folks on Facebook who wouldn't stop with senseless, divisive anti-NORML rhetoric. But speaking of senseless and divisive rhetoric, what did St. Pierre hope to accomplish with his statements published on Celebrity Stoner earlier in the week? St. Pierre, who I wager is currently learning differently in no uncertain terms, seemed to have decided it was a good time to bash the medical marijuana movement that brought safe access to patients in 16 states and the District of Columbia. Defending the medical cannabis industry is so yesterday St. Pierre's piece began, and it only goes downhill from there. If this were the 1920s, and advocacy of today's medical cannabis industry, Alan always puts medical in the quotes like that. Good job of pissing us off. They're genius. They're referring, this is Steve Elliott referring to Alan St. Pierre. Would sound like a lawyer back then fronting for the legal sellers of prescription alcohol during Prohibition, St. Pierre wrote. Prescriptive alcohol was a sham then, and the medical cannabis industry, not medical cannabis itself, is largely a sham now, he wrote. NORML and lawyers like Bill Panzer have been warning ganjapreneurs, I love that word, ganjapreneurs. Why didn't I think of that? Damn. And their legal counsel at our seminars and conferences about this political and legal box canyon since at least 2002, St. Pierre wrote. Of course, we cannot allow cannabis to be boxed in that way. Rescheduling it is no solution, nor is any way forward which allows big pharmacies, to monopolize the access to this healing and beneficial plant. But thrashing the medical marijuana community, thus endangering safe access for potentially millions of seriously ill patients, is bad idea. Defending medical marijuana, Mr. St. Pierre, is not yesterday, it's today, and it will remain today until every single patient who needs it has safe, legal, unfettered access to the herb that helps them most. Until that day, if you can't actually help us achieve that goal, please avoid stepping on your dick and trying to speak for us. It's supremely irritating to read a healthy man's writing about the medical marijuana scam, in quotes. The experience was even more surreal for me. This again is Steve Elliott speaking. This morning, as I racked with dry heaves, relieved only by cannabis, as I read St. Pierre's column, yes, the cannabis brought me by, you guessed it, the medical marijuana industry stopped the nausea. No, it didn't feel like a scam. So, Steve was feeling sick. He's a medical patient. He had his cannabis, and of course, he knows it's not a scam. You know it's not a scam. We all know it's not a scam. And the last little sentence here is, maybe it's past time for NORML to appoint a medical marijuana patient liaison, because your lack of empathy isn't doing your organization any favors. Well, that's just really outrageous. That someone fighting for this medicine, it's medicine, but fighting for this plant for so long, and I support legalization, I always have, has sort of whacked out. I think it's probably time for someone like Alan St. Pierre to step down from NORML. He degraded all of us, and I don't think at this point, until he apologizes and does something, we should not be sending NORML any money. That's just one man's opinion. And I'm just going to play a little tune and maybe find another article. You see the numbers on the screen. If you'd like to call in and talk about MMJ in the USA, let's do it. Be right back.
The medical marijuana the medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical
I want to thank you all for listening tonight. Next week we hope to have our guest, and of course it's a much more interesting show when I don't have to riff and play music. I hope you like the music tonight. We'll be back next week. I'll let you know who the guest is. I thank you again. We need to get you guys to call in out there if you're listening on the replays. Saturday nights, 8 p.m. Let's do it. I want to thank my two radio hosts, my mentor, radio host mentors, both with the same initials, HS. I know them, they don't know who I am. Maybe, sort of, they might. And once again, fcannabis.com. That's the letter F. And they know why. Feel well, everybody. Good night.
The medical marijuana for you and me. The medical marijuana.
Shalom. Shalom.
Good night, everybody.